All right, good afternoon, Facebook. Welcome to our special Facebook Live straight from Digestive Disease Week in Washington, D.C. I'm really excited to be here today to talk about a topic that I know is of major interest to all of you. So before we get started, if you are watching, and I don't see any of you logged on yet, but I'm hoping that will change soon, chime in the comment box, let us know who you are and where you're from, and ask us any questions. So we know that a topic of major interest within the IBD community is the role that diet plays in the management of Crohn's and colitis. Unfortunately, there's been little scientific research into how diet may impact IBD, but the good news is that we're working to change that. So in 2016, the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation received a grant from the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute to look at two different diets and their ability to induce remission in Crohn's patients. I'm excited to be joined today by Dr. Jim Lewis from the University of Pennsylvania, who's the lead investigator of this study, and he's going to share some more details about the study with all of you. So again, if you're watching, say hi, let us know who you are, where you're from, and let's just jump right in. So Dr. Lewis, why were you interested in studying the role of diet in IBD in the first place?
I've had an interest in this for well over a decade, in part because when I see patients in the office, uniformly, I would say the number one question that you get is, what should I be eating? It's just really important question to patients. And I think that we as physicians struggle to know what to tell patients. There hasn't been a lot of really well done research up to this time. So many physicians just come back with an answer, eat whatever makes you feel better and avoid those things that make you not feel as well. But that's feels not very rewarding to me. I would like to be able to give somebody rational advice that's based on science that would help make their disease better and make them feel better.
Okay. And so you were saying that there hasn't been a lot of science around this. Has there been any dietary interventions that have shown any effectiveness in treating Crohn's?
For certain, there has. And I want to point out, so I take care of adult patients. I'm an adult gastroenterologist. Most of the better research in this space has been done in pediatrics, where what's referred to as exclusive enteral nutrition has been used widely. And in fact, in some parts of the world, it's considered the first-line therapy for Crohn's disease. Exclusive enteral nutrition means instead of eating table food, these children get all their nutrition from a meal replacement formula. You can think of this as any of the sort of formulas that are on the market, Ensure, Boost, things like that. They're often different from that, but it's the same concept of where you have a liquid formula that you can consume to provide all your calories and nutrients. And it's quite amazing that if you take children with Crohn's disease and put them on exclusive enteral nutrition, the remission rates are extraordinarily high. The downside to this is there's not a lot of people who really want to give up eating table food for extensive long periods of time. So my interest in this hinges back on, if exclusive enteral nutrition works, can't we find a diet that includes table food that gets to the same benefits? I also want to highlight, so we're speaking to you from Digestive Disease Week, and yesterday there was a presentation that gave a sort of systematic review of the studies of different diets that have used whole foods as a treatment for Crohn's disease and pulled together all of these previous studies. When you pulled all the studies together, it did appear that and I'm going to put this in quotes, the study diets were better than usual diet to improve patient symptoms and induce remission for patients with Crohn's disease. But I want to qualify that the level of evidence there was pretty weak. The diets were very, very different. So it's pulling together all sorts of different diets. And it hadn't, even with that evidence, it hasn't gotten us to an answer of being able to say, this is what you should eat.
And I know that's what a lot of patients want to know when they're diagnosed. So how did you come up with the idea for And for all of you who know, the name of this study is the DINE study. So how did you come up with the idea for it?
This was a unique situation for how to come up with an idea of a study, and different really from anything that I've done before. We did this in partnership with the foundation and Ibd Partners, previously known as CCFA Partners for those of you out there. So this is a patient-powered research network where patients who are registered, and if you're online and are not registered, please do. Go to ibdpartners.org.
Yep.
Is that the right? Okay. And so there's the opportunity if you're a member of Ibd Partners, to propose research questions and for other people to endorse or modify the questions that you have proposed. And we looked through the questions that were being proposed, and these questions about diet were at the top of the list. There were questions about specific carbohydrate diet, which we'll come back to in a moment. But that already told us, it confirmed my previous belief that this was really important to patients, and that patients wanted to know the answer to this specific question. And then we were lucky enough that the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute, also known as PCORI, had an opportunity to apply for support for clinical trials that would answer questions that were important to patients. And so we had all the evidence in the world that this was important to patients.
So what makes the study unique?
I think there are a few things that make it unique. One of those is that we're going to study two diets that have a rational reason for why you would want to consume this diet if you had Crohn's disease. One is specific carbohydrate diet, which there are lots of anecdotal reports and some uncontrolled research, uncontrolled meaning there was no comparator group, suggesting a therapeutic benefit. The other is a Mediterranean-style diet, which actually is what the USDA essentially is recommending that people eat. It's associated with living longer, having less heart disease, which is a potential risk for people with Crohn's disease, associated with lower cancer-related mortality. And on top of that, both of these diets are being produced exclusively using fresh ingredients, no additives. So they're, in air quotes again, they are sort of clean diets in that there's no processed foods in these diets. And some later in the discussion, we'll probably come back to this idea of processed foods.
So what exactly are you going to be looking at in the study?
So the study asks whether patients who have symptoms of Crohn's disease get improvement of their symptoms better with one diet relative to the other. And it also asks whether the subset of those patients who have elevated markers of inflammation, whether those markers of inflammation go down more with one diet relative to the other.
And who's eligible to participate?
If you have Crohn's disease, you're potentially eligible to participate. But in all honesty, to participate, you have to be an adult, so you have to be 18 or older. You have to have symptoms that we categorize as mild to moderate symptoms of Crohn's disease. And that's done through a fancy formula, but in general, what feels like mild to moderate to you is probably mild to moderate. And those are really the two main inclusion criteria. There is one other sort of unique inclusion criteria, which comes back to aspects of what makes this study unique, which is you have to live somewhere that you could receive once a week delivery of food to your home. Because in this study, we provide people with all the food that they should need for the first 6 weeks of the study. So it's a once a week delivery to your home of large boxes that contain prepared meals that merely need to be heated in some cases, snacks. It's on Friday, you get a delivery of essentially 7 days worth of food. So you
Saves you time on food shopping.
You don't have to shop. You don't have to cook. I can tell you, I've tried it. It's excellent. I've lived on it for a week and completely enjoyed eating the food. But it means you do have to live somewhere that you can get a delivery to your home of the food.
So aside from food delivery, what does participation entail?
It's a great question. So the trial runs for 12 weeks. You have to have 3 visits at one of the 30 plus study sites. So hopefully you live near a study site. We're going to collect from you some blood samples and some stool samples at the beginning, at 6 weeks, and at 12 weeks. And once a day, you have a very short online questionnaire to fill out. It's only a couple questions, can be done in about a minute or so. So we can keep track of how people's symptoms are going. And those are really the main things that you do. I do want to clarify that we only provide people with food for the first 6 weeks. And then the second 6 weeks, you're on your own, but not completely on your own. We have dietitians that are available to help answer your questions. We have a whole set of resources available to help you know what you can consume on your diet. But this will help us understand both at the first 6 weeks how people can do when we make it as easy as possible, but also the feasibility of doing this on your own.
So now for the big picture, what are you hoping to learn from the study upon completion?
It's the perfect question. Why would we do any of this research? At the end of the day, we'd really like to be able to say, is one diet any better than the other diet? The 2 diets that I described to you, specific carbohydrate diet and Mediterranean diet, in all honesty, following them on your own, the specific carbohydrate diet is much more of a challenge. It's more restrictive in what you can eat, takes out essentially all grains, nearly all dairy products. It's a much more restrictive diet. The reason I emphasized before that both of these diets are prepared exclusively from fresh ingredients with no additives, no processed food here, is one of the hypotheses of how these various whole food diets work is that they're made from fresh ingredients without additives, all organic food, etc. The other is that there are certain components of the diet that you need to exclude. We don't know whether you actually have to exclude those additional components or it's good enough to have your diet from pure fresh ingredients, etc. So at the end of the day, by comparing how people do between these 2 diets should help us be able to answer that question.
Okay, I'm going to stop for a second and just see if we have any other questions that have come in. Got a bunch of folks saying hi. So hi to Sandy and Kathleen. Hello. Okay. One person said that her son was put on a long-term low residue diet to limit the amount of scar tissue and thickening in the bowel to avoid surgery. Do you have any thoughts you want to add on the benefits of low residue?
Yeah, so it's not uncommon for physicians to prescribe a low residue diet. And in the setting, and let me preface this by saying, neither of the diets that we're using are low residue diets. So patients who have what's referred to as obstructive symptoms, meaning that there's a narrowing in the bowel and they have symptoms that are consistent with that narrowing causing symptoms, are not eligible to participate in this because these diets have plenty of fiber in them. For people who have a fixed narrowing, a low residue diet makes sense because we would like them not to have a bowel obstruction. So the answer, I think, to the more global question, is there a time for low residue diets? I think there is a time for low residue diets. Those people where it's most indicated won't be, unfortunately, able to participate in this study.
Okay. Let's look up. Getting a lot of questions about how to enroll. We're going to be sharing that information shortly, so sit tight. One question about the low Fodmap diet. My husband's inflammation has been under control with infliximab, but he continues to have IBS symptoms, which are helped by low Fodmap eating. Is low Fodmap helpful in IBD patients? I know it's used primarily in IBS.
It's an excellent question, a very informed question. And there are features of specific carbohydrate diet which overlap with low Fodmap diet. So there are definitely some similarities.
Okay, and this is a really important comment from Donna, which is diet's important but doesn't cure the disease. And you are spot on. And I'm going to allow the doctor to elaborate, but I think what the ultimate goal is to see how diet can play a role in your overall treatment plan. It's not meant to cure your disease, but rather meant to give you another tool in your arsenal.
I think that that's true. One of the really pressing things that faces us today in the world of inflammatory bowel disease, and again at the meeting yesterday, there was a whole symposium on this, is we still don't really understand what causes people to get Crohn's disease. We know that your genetics contribute, but genetics contribute at most 30 to 40%. So there has to be some environmental exposure that is important here. Diet is one of many that could be playing a role, and it's one that is easily modifiable. And so it is potential that, or let me say, there is the potential that with the appropriate dietary modification, one might be able to be on less immunosuppressant medication as opposed to more. And I will actually give you some data to support that. There are a number of observational studies that have been done where they have shown that patients treated with anti-tumor necrosis factor, anti-TNF drugs, so these are things like infliximab and adalimumab, soralizumab, golimumab, that those are patients who are treated with those medications plus the exclusive enteral nutrition that we talked about at the beginning versus infliximab alone or versus one of those drugs alone, that the combination may be even more effective than just the medication alone, which suggests that understanding what the right diet is could be a really important adjunctive therapy for patients with Crohn's disease.
Okay, we have another really important question, which is this study group diet only, or are candidates also on medication?
Yeah, so patients stay on whatever medications they're on at the time that they enroll in the study, and we ask them to keep their medications at a stable dose.
Okay. CM, we are talking about the specific carbohydrate diet and a Mediterranean style diet. Okay. Just looking quickly to make sure could or should probiotics be used with any of these diets?
Could or should? We don't know the answer. So I think your question is outside of a clinical trial. It's hard to know for sure what the additive effect would be of adding probiotics. It's complicated enough when you think about what food people should be eating, because food is probably the ultimate, it is the ultimate prebiotic. Prebiotic meaning something that impacts what microorganisms are living within your intestines. And so adding that to probiotics, it's the next horizon. We have to get over the first hurdle before we'll know what the second answer is there.
So in the study, I'm going to just repeat. For people who are tuning in, I'm chatting with Dr. James Lewis from the University of Pennsylvania about the DINE study, which is a study that is looking at the Mediterranean-style diet versus a specific carbohydrate diet and its role in Crohn's. So what sort of results are you going to be looking for the patients who are enrolled to see whether or not these diets are helping?
Yeah, just a quick recap. We'll be looking for patients to have resolution of their symptoms. So the people coming in are those with mild to moderate symptoms. So we're looking for resolution of symptoms, and we're looking for resolution of inflammation, and we'll measure inflammation with blood tests.
All right, sorry about that. We got cut off. If you can't hear us, chime in and let us know, please. We're talking about the Mediterranean style diet, specific carbohydrate diet, that study that Dr. Lewis is leading with the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. And we were talking about how patients can get involved.
Yeah, so the easiest way is to go to the foundation's website or to clinicaltrials.gov, search for DINE-CD. For example, on the website, then you'll have a link that'll show you where there are sites that are conducting the trial, and that will be an opportunity for you to reach out to one of those sites and say, "Hey, can I get screened?" There's also the DINE-CD actual website. So if you just go into Google or whatever your favorite browser system is, and put in DINE-CD, you should find the website. There'll be a link there that you can contact the Data Coordinating Center at University of Pennsylvania, and we can connect you with one of the participating sites.
And I'm going to post a link for you to be able to find it in the comments on the video when this chat is over. And just to give you a quick rundown, we have sites that are in Boston, Michigan, Indiana, Minnesota, California. So it's really all across the country. So you will hopefully, if you want to enroll, be living near one of these sites.
And I just, not to interrupt, but it's only, so when you think about how close or far you are away, you really only have to be at the site 3 times over the course of 12 weeks. So if it's a medium drive, I hope you'll still be willing to consider the medium drive.
And then one other question, which I realized we didn't address, is what sort of costs are associated?
Yeah, there's no cost to participating. There's no charge for the food. There's no charge for the blood work, the stools tests, etc. I guess the only indirect cost to you would be the cost of getting to the center where the study is taking place.
All right. Is there anything else you want to add, Dr. Lewis?
I just would say that I just want to put one other plug in. So we have a number of patients and patient advocates who've really been part of designing this. We think that, and I can tell you from my own personal experience, this is probably the most engaged that I've ever had patient stakeholders in the design and implementation of a trial. And it's because they too just felt this is so super important. And as a result, for our steering committee and the people who are running this trial, I mean, this is incredibly important to us as well. And we really hope that the results will be meaningful to patients and physicians all over the world.
All right, so just to recap, we were talking about the DINE study, which is a study of the specific carbohydrate diet and the Mediterranean style diet and its ability to have an impact on Crohn's patients. We are recruiting patients currently, so there are no study results yet that have been published, which I just saw. But if you have Crohn's disease, if you are over 18, you might be eligible to participate. So I am going to share a link so you can see all the different sites that are participating. You can learn more information, and you can find out ways to contact either the data processing center or one of the sites. So that being said, I also feel like I should make a plug for Ibd Partners because that is how this study arose. If you are not part of Ibd Partners yet, you should be. It is a really easy way for you as a patient to have an impact on IBD research. So you can find out information about how to join there at ibdpartners.org. And if you have any additional questions about diet and IBD or really anything about IBD, contact our IBD Help Center at 888-694-8872 or info@Crohn'sColitisFoundation.org.